What's going on, super creators? Manny here again, and thank you for joining me on this mini tutorial series where I answer your questions so that you guys can learn and be better users. And the question that I'll be answering today actually came from username Absolute Hugo. The question he asked was how to edit portraits and get that smooth, glowing skin. So I'm gonna give you a few tips that I use. I'm not gonna go super technical. There's many ways to get this result. A lot are really technical and very professional retouching, and what I'm going to show you is just some basic things that you can just think about and worry about while you're taking the pictures and editing the pictures. I'm going to show you some in Lightroom and in Photoshop, but all of these techniques can be used with any app that you use on your phone. They usually have some sort of function, so you just have to understand what that function is and then do it. All right, so let's go right into editing. And so, as I mentioned, I'm going to teach you guys how to make those glowing portrait look just using Lightroom. And it's going to be very simple. I'm just going to go through the basics. It's nothing crazy. Just so you understand at least the beginning process without going too technical. All right, so this is the image that I'm actually using. So this image is from a photo shoot that was done at Pursuit of Portraits, I think at the beginning of like 2017 and 2018. And so just to explain a little bit, so this portrait, I used it because it has, fairly good lighting. The lighting it has here was from the sun coming from the back. And they had a really nice light just hitting their face. I use this because it's a portrait, perfect for this example. So the first thing that you want to do, or the first tip, is to make sure that you have the correct exposure, right? And you want to make sure that you have that in camera, or at least fix it first. And what I mean exposure is this button here. So you raise it to make sure that you have the right exposure on the face. Just fixing this pretty much starts it off correctly for you, right? But I'll show you a way to check it that I learned. And it's with using the histogram. So the histogram here, it shows you, right, blacks, shadows. This middle part is exposure, and then highlights and whites, right? So what you want to focus on is this middle part, and you want to make sure that most of the information is here in this middle part. So I'll show you a way to pinpoint the face of the models while you're checking this, right? So before fixing that, the way to check the exposure is you go here to the crop and just make sure that it's cropped to their face, as best as possible. Yeah, you want to make sure basically their face is the biggest indicator in here. Just hit that, it'll crop it. The reason why you want to do this is because you want, now when you look at the histogram, you can see that most of it is in the shadows instead of being here in the middle. So all this peak information you want to get here, and the easy way of doing that is, let me see if I play with the shadows. No. It's a different effect. Don't worry about that. Just focus on exposure. So when you use the exposure and you bring it in, now you want to make sure that this information is hitting here, right? Is inside without clipping here. So that's like as much exposure as you can have without it like going overboard. So I think we can start there. It's pretty good. And what you do is, so then now go back. Right here, reset. Okay. So now that you have this exposure properly dialed in, now just by doing this, just by fixing the exposure, let me show you the difference. This is before, and this is after. So that's just fixing the exposure. You already have beautiful light on their face. So the next step that I'm going to show you is by manually adjusting the light on their face and exposure on their face by using the brush tool, right? I forgot what it's named. Something brush. Adjustment brush. There you go. Adjustment brush. So when you click the adjustment brush, there's two settings that I want to use. The first one is going to be dodge. So basically what dodge does is just it enhances the exposure. If you see that, the only setting that's being touched is the exposure by 0.25. And what you want to do with this is you just want to, it just brightens, it just adds more exposure to certain parts. So since we're looking for portraiture and their skin to glow, so we're going to add it to their skin. Right, and this just adds a little bit more exposure to the face. So a rule of thumb for this technique, you're supposed to just use light in on the parts that already have light, like here on the cheeks, right here on the chin, right here in the middle. But just use it and learn, and you'll see what you like. So as you see here, I'm just adding a little bit more exposure light to the face. If you want to change the size of this little clicker, you can use the scroll of the mouse up and down. That's what I do. I really forgot how it is with keyboard. So you see now we just added a little bit more of exposure to the face. And again, so I'm gonna hit done here. So we're done with that setting. And I'm gonna show you the before and the after. So just using just those two steps, look at the difference that we did on the picture. Right? So the last thing, or one of the next thing I'm gonna show you is again, let's use the adjustment brush. And this time what we're gonna use is Soften Skin Light. And I'm going to show you actually why that works and how that works, okay? So, Soften Skin Light, what it does is that it adjusts the texture and the clarity, but more the texture. Now, this is important because, just to explain, I mean, play with it, you'll see what it does. But texture is all the fine details and all the fine points of the face and anything in the picture. It just kind of blurs it out and masks it. And yeah, it just defocuses it, which makes things glow a little bit more. Clarity also does the same thing, but it does it with more of the bigger parts of the image, like the more sharper and detailed lines, contrasty lines. But like I said, play with it and then you'll see. So what we're going to do here is also apply this to the face, just as we did with the other one. And this will just soften up the skin and really let the light shine off their face a little bit more, making it softer, more glowy. Alright, so now you can already see that how the face is glowing a lot more compared to before. After, now you have a much better look. And I mean, one of the last, I guess, tips that I can give is just to use a radial filter, or like radial blur, kind of like there's another name for it, but vignetting. There you go, vignetting. So use vignetting, and this does is you create the area that you want more focus on, which is obviously their faces, right? So we're going to take this, we're going to drag it. And what this does is whatever parameters that you mess with here are going to be affected either inside or outside the circle. So for this, we're just going to go to exposure. And as you see, what this is doing is that it is removing exposure from the background and just centering it on their faces. Or you can stretch this out just a little bit, just to not be too overbearing. All right. Perfect. So there you have. So now you have the before image, and you have the after image of this portrait. That is basic way to get their faces to glow. Another thing is adding a little bit more warmth. That usually gives a little bit more pop to the picture. But those are the ways that you can make this kind of portrait. Of course, this is just basic overlying. There's more in-depth tricks, but you would probably have to go into Photoshop for that. So that's for this tutorial. All right, perfect. So as you saw, it was very simple for me to turn the image that was very dark and dull and brighten it up and add whatever I needed, some clarity, some exposure to the skin to make it really glow and look even. I didn't have to go into heavy retouching. I didn't have to go into Photoshop. I didn't have to use frequency separation. So those are the tips that I would use. I would say just practice it, implement it, use it on different subjects, and then just see how it works and how it doesn't work. That's the best thing, is just to understand it. You have to practice it, you have to try. All right, guys? So I really, really hope that you guys learned something from this tutorial. And if you did, please write down below in the comments what was your favorite tip, or maybe what was the tip that you haven't heard before, didn't know before, that you're gonna use. And also, if you do have a question about some editing technique, whether it be for photo, whether it be for video, or just some common knowledge, leave the question below, and I will definitely make sure to make a video just like this so I can teach you guys so that you can better yourselves, and then we can grow together as a community. Again, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. I had a lot of fun making it and sharing what I know with all of you. Okay, so again, signing off. This is Super Manny, and remember, each and every one of you are super creators. You just have to find your superpower, and I will snap at you guys in the next video.